In the modern world, autism is often talked about purely in terms of challenges and struggles. But a growing number of researchers are asking a very different question. What if, tens of thousands of years ago, the exact same traits weren't a disadvantage at all? What if, for certain roles in ancient survival, they were actually a massive edge? This is the theory of the ancient solitary hunter, and it might change how you think about the entire history of the human brain. A different kind of survival skill. For most of human history, roughly 95% of it according to researchers, humans lived as hunter-gatherers. Survival didn't just depend on strength or speed. It depended on very specific mental skills. Tracking an animal for hours, sometimes days, without losing focus. Noticing tiny details in the landscape that most people would completely miss. Repeating precise, patient tasks like flint-knapping a tool for hours until it was exactly right. And tolerating long stretches of total solitude, far from the group, with no one to talk to. According to one evolutionary hypothesis, these are the exact same traits closely associated with autism today. The solitary forager hypothesis. One researcher formally proposed this idea in a peer-reviewed evolutionary psychology journal, calling it the solitary forager hypothesis. The theory suggests that autistic traits may have originally evolved to support a very specific ancient role, the individual who thrives gathering or hunting alone, rather than in a group. Intense focus on a single repetitive task. Deep comfort with being alone for extended periods. An exceptional eye for pattern and detail. In a modern classroom, these traits can look like a struggle to fit in. In an ancient forest, tracking a single set of hoofprints for 6 hours straight, they may have looked like genius. The extreme male brain and hunting. A separate evolutionary theory focuses specifically on the demands of ancient hunting itself. In most hunter-gatherer societies studied by anthropologists, men were typically the primary hunters. Successful hunting required predicting repeating seasonal patterns of animal movement, essentially a repetitive behavior. It required enduring total solitude for extended stretches, an intensely antisocial state by modern standards. And it required inventing and refining mechanical tools with total precision. Researchers behind this theory argue these three demands line up almost perfectly with traits associated with autism, leading some to hypothesize that certain autistic cognitive patterns may represent an evolved adaptation specifically shaped by the demands of ancient hunting. Evidence in ancient art itself. Some researchers have gone even further, looking for evidence in what ancient humans actually left behind. Characteristics associated with autism, exceptional attention to detail and unusually strong memory for pattern, have been identified by some researchers in the technique of certain prehistoric cave art. At sites in southern Africa dating back roughly 100,000 years, archaeologists have found extremely intricate, detail-oriented tool and craft work. Researchers studying this record have proposed that individuals with autistic-type cognitive traits may have been present and valued within these communities from a very early point in human history. Not just tolerated, integrated. This is where the theory gets genuinely interesting. Some anthropologists studying early collaborative morality argue that small hunter-gatherer bands may have actively benefited from including people with a wide range of cognitive and behavioral differences. A tribe made up entirely of highly social, group-focused generalists might struggle when a problem needed obsessive, isolated focus. A tribe with even 1 or 2 members wired for intense solitary concentration may have solved certain survival problems the rest of the group physically couldn't. Under this theory, cognitive diversity itself, not uniformity, may have been one of the quiet advantages of early human groups. The other side of the theory. It's important to say clearly, this remains a contested, ongoing area of research, not settled scientific fact. Some researchers push back hard on parts of this theory. Modern hunter-gatherer societies studied by anthropologists are often highly cooperative and group-dependent, not built around lone operators. Critics argue that surviving completely alone, with no group support at all, would have been extremely dangerous in most prehistoric environments. Disease, predators, and injury made total isolation a real risk, not an advantage. The honest answer is that no one can travel back 100,000 years and confirm exactly how these traits were treated. What we do have is consistent genetic evidence that autism has an extremely long evolutionary history in humans, likely predating the Stone Age itself, which means these traits didn't appear recently. They've been part of the human story from the very beginning. What changed since then? So if these traits may have offered real advantages in ancient environments, why do they so often create struggle today? Researchers point to one major shift. Roughly 12,000 years ago, agriculture changed everything. Humans moved from small, flexible hunter-gatherer bands into large, permanent, highly social settlements, villages, towns, eventually cities. Life increasingly rewarded constant social coordination, group negotiation, and rapid adaptation to large numbers of unfamiliar people. The same traits that may have quietly supported a solitary hunter for 100,000 years suddenly had far fewer environments where they fit as naturally. It's not that the traits changed. It's that human society, and what it demanded from people, changed dramatically around them. What this means today. None of this erases the very real challenges autistic people can face navigating a world built for a different kind of brain. But it does offer a genuinely different lens on where these traits came from. Not a modern malfunction, not a flaw with no purpose. Possibly, according to this body of research, one thread in a very old, very deliberate pattern of human cognitive diversity, one that may have helped our species survive in the first place. For roughly 95% of human history, different kinds of minds may not have just been tolerated. They may have been exactly what kept the whole group alive.